Oh yes, so welcome back to African Colonization TV. Let's look into what is really happening in UN. According to the headline, it says Biafran case reaches the UN and EU. Latest legal development explain. The Biafran issue is now gets to UN and EU, and this our Biafran activist he explained a lot of things the legal concerning the international body, how they are now discussing in what and what that is going on. And the main reason why is like the UN, they are not much involved, or they are not talking much about the issue of Biafra. So don't skip any part of it. Make sure you watch it to the end, because this activist is going to explain a lot of things concerning what is really going on international and what is happening, and the issue of Mazinam Nikano. What is there, and what everybody knows is that the international body, which is the America, the UN, and the world power, they are talking much about what is happening in Nigeria, mostly this issue of Nigerian division and the issue of Christian genocide. But what we need now from them is for them to talk and also act, not only to talk and they keep it beside. Is for them to talk and also for them to act. So a lot is going on. A lot is going on. As for the Asrock, they are in panic. They are in fear because they don't know what will be the next of the America. They don't know. Throughout last week, we have been posting and reviewing to you the debate concerning the AU and the UN, when they are discussing about the genocide that is going on in Nigeria and against the Christians in Nigeria. Don't skip any part of this video, watch it to the end, because this will be Biafran activist. He explained a lot concerning what is happening really now presently in UN and in AU concerning what is happening. So about to watch, like, subscribe, and share for everyone to see things going on.
Good morning. Thank you. Wherever you're watching us from, thank you for joining us. We want to just bring you to a notification of one of the very daring questions a lot of people has been asking to know the viability of restoration of Biafra. It's all about Biafra. I'm talking about this morning. A lot of questions have been put out there, both locally and internationally. People are trying to find out, especially Biafrans, what actually can one actually do, to restore Biafra, recognized for the world to actually recognize Biafra. Is there any possibility, in that regard? Considering the fact that United Nations currently now is maybe possibly, showing lack of obligations to their responsibility, and also we have some major organizations like the United Nations and the EU. Is there any possibility that these organizations and blocs, especially the European Union, can actually, do something about Biafra? We know the history of Biafra before now, how it came to be, and how it became, a global identity for the people of old Eastern, region. Then we'll have Ojuku there. Then later on we'll have Wazirike. Then we'll have the supreme leader of the IPOB, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who gave everything credibility and credence. I'm not trying to say that a lot of people, the other people did not contribute, but Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has been very outstanding in the struggle to restore Biafra. I want you to just calm down and listen to the analysis, responding to a lot of questions that were being put to me to clarify, whether Biafra is possible or not. Let us look at the, United Nations, how United Nations came to be, and we also look at, the EU, countries, because EU is a bloc. a regional bloc, and they are seen to be very, powerful, organizations that can unsettle a lot of things, But United Nations came into being on 24th October 1945. Immediately after the Second World War, the U.S. government felt that they need to avoid another world war, and the only way to do that is to engage the nations around the world. The issues that actually triggered that conflict as at that time. Yes, it came founded in October 2024, 24th October 1945, with a purpose. What is the purpose? International peace and stability, promotion of human rights, cooperation among nations, and of course international development of the global world. That's one of the reasons why United Nations was actually, formed. And when it was formed, subsequently, it has about 51 countries solidly, being a part of that. And we have had so many, United Nations Secretary Generals, but presently now it is in the hands of Antonio, Guterres, a Swiss, yeah, citizen, a Switzerland citizen. So also, apart from 51 countries, who are part of that, then they have what they call, member states, making up to 193, member states, and then apart from that too, let us also look at EU. This analysis is very important for you to know and be able to understand the direction on the possibility of Biafra, because Biafra was a nation before and is still a nation, but Nigeria has not been able to respect the ceasefire agreement between Biafra and, of course, Nigeria immediately after the civil war came to an end. A lot of people might not say have a different opinion to this, but that is actually what happened. What Nigeria and Biafra had a ceasefire, and there were conditions for that ceasefire, which the Nigerian government actually relegated. Just like what we see about Gowon and the rest of them. So what they did is to begin to push for dismantling of the Biafran structure within the Nigerian state. Remember, we'll still come to that United Nations Charter guarantees the right for self-determination, and that is a right up to this moment. It's just that United Nations has not been able to fulfill some of those things. Then let us come to the EU. EU was founded in 1st November 1993. That was when EU was founded. EU was formerly European Economic Community, established in 1957 by a treaty in Rome. Currently now, the EU have 27 states, even though I will still believe that it is a regional bloc. Why there's a reason why Britain actually pulled out. Then let us look at the factors that can trigger international consideration of Biafra. Let us look at the factors that can trigger international consideration of Biafra. Biafra is already a popular name all over the world now. It was not what it used to be before, courtesy of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, resilient, spirit. We must give it to Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, the IPOB leader. Then, on that note, there are reasons why those things can come, and on that note, especially when it comes to Nigeria, Biafra. Since that negotiation between Biafra has actually collapsed, and Nigeria has actually collapsed, settlement has never been agreed upon, just like what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu said initially. There was conditions Mazi Nnamdi Kanu put out there before he now decided that those conditions that cannot actually, hold waters again. And it's still very, very, significant in the issue of extreme marginalization against the Biafrans in the old eastern region. I don't know why Nigerian government is jittery about that. Anyway, and then another factor is the issue of resettlement or of human rights abuse. You can see a lot of things, human rights abuse, about the Biafrans all over the world, currently in Nigeria. You can see what is actually, going on. Then that is on that note. Can they respect? Can Biafrans, if actually they are being considered for sovereignty by these nations, then we are going to come to that. If the United Nations have the right to do that, whether EU have the right to do that, and if they don't have the right to do that, then what are the options? And to tell you that the possibility of that, having checked everything now, Nigeria, Biafra has already submitted their secular constitution to the United Nations, documented, reported, and signed, acknowledged by the United Nations agencies. Then they have also looked at the broken political negotiation between Biafra and Nigeria. That one is no go area. No, then the issue of human rights abuse. That's what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu brought to the table. Non-violent approach. That sees that. Then effective governance. That's the structure of IPOB. Currently now, I can see how they are able to run. Government come, government goes. And then the DOS is still there, and IPOB is still there. Then regional and international, impact on regional security. Then what that actually mean? Can Biafra as a nation be able to maintain regional peace? Biafra is located somewhere in West Africa, and we have West Africa is a block, and there are traces that the Biafrans can be able to maintain a relationship with their neighboring countries around the world. Then the qualification for EU and the United Nations recognition. What are the qualifications? Can this EU, can this UN consider Biafra, or is Biafra actually qualified to become a nation? Let us look at those things that makes qualification of a nation or recognition of a nation, the way it is now, very possible. One is right to self-determination, population, that's United Nations. Biafra has the population close to 85 million people, Then respect for, I have already, explained that, does they have the capacity? That's what the DOS is doing now. Trying to establish Biafra liaison offices and embassies, where they can engage in a diplomatic, rapport with nations and other agencies who are responsible for sovereignty or self-determination for any nation or any tribe, seeking sovereignty or in the order of United Nations. What about the territory? Permanent population. I've explained that is already there. Effective government. That's what IPOB and Biafran government in exile. A lot of people do not understand why Simon Ekpa is very important and also very smart. There's a parallel government, meaning that Biafran government is in existence. That's what they call Biafran Republic government in exile. People do not know the significance of that. So that's what the world is actually looking at, and you can see over some time now. The Ngozi Rabeza has been maintaining that line, and why Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, are maintaining the structure, a body, who is lobbying around the world to get Biafra recognized. Capacity to engage the international community, internationally. DOS is also, that's what the reason for DOS. All those appointments, are part of it. Capacity to engage, yes, and I can tell you, this present DOS now, you can see the caliber of people Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, brought to the fold, Then peaceful and democratic law. Yes, I told you that we have already submitted that. That has to do with regional stability, diplomatic ties, international support. Just like what Mazen Nnamdi Kanu did recently, where he wrote to about 72 countries, identifying them. There's a change in the structure of government of the DOS and the responsibility of DOS currently now. That is the reason why for that appointment, a lot of people will not understand what is actually going on. But I can tell you that this guy, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, is completely in order, flowing the process of international requirement for that. Then another factor we are going to look at, like I just put it that way, what can we do after all these qualifications? Yes, Biafra is qualified to be a nation. That is one, qualified in all ramifications: territory, waters, everything, human, police, army, whatever, government and other. That the reference point is Biafran government in exile. And the structures of IPOB and ODOS. They have already been identified. Globally around the world. Then that have to do with policy. Unilateral drafting of Biafra. Then let me just tell you, some countries like the EU might not have that power to draft, to guarantee a draft for Biafra recognition. What that actually means is that EU member states can. I hope you understand what I'm saying now. The law empowers EU member states to recognize a nation, but not the power does not give it to EU as a bloc, but member states can recognize a nation. And that is exactly what Israel did with Somaliland. And by that recognition, it will trigger all United Nations and EU bodies, to factor the responsibility of recognizing such, authority, because it is a sovereign nation that actually recognize that particular nation seeking for self-determination. And that is why we are asking United States and Israel, to lead in that regard. But remember, the UN Charter in major human treaties, is self-determination. I think I've explained that United Nations in the one of the major thing was or treaties they entered was centered on human rights and of course self-determination. Then we also look at the support by other sovereign states. That's what I said, that's why we are looking at Israel. We are looking at other countries. Already we have about 11 countries who are already putting signatories to that, pending the official recognition, whether you are a member. This thing that has nothing to do with AU or ECOWAS or no, because the international law, hold more ground than regional and even in the United Nations. United Nations might not come out to say that, but member states of United Nations can actually do that. And Biafra have met all the requirements. I repeat, Biafra have met all the requirements. And that goes further to tell you that there is very possibility that this thing with Biafra as a nation will come. Let me give you an instance before the end of this video, and I specifically, then we have after that the UN have 193 member states, while EU have 27 member states. According to international law and treaties entered on recognition and self-determination, These two blocks, have the sole responsibility to empower and allow their member states to do that, having met the requirement, like I've just gave it to you. One is population, one is constitutional and respect for human rights. Then, and secondly, territory, waters, territorial waters, can the population themselves, do they agree to that? And that is what they call referendum. Do they agree? You can see, the massive support when IPOB was doing the rally. All those things were being documented. You can also notice the abuse from the Nigerian government, on the shooting and killing of people who are, rallying and demonstrating for the struggle and recognition of Biafra. I want you to look at this video clearly, and I can tell you very clearly that IPOB, DOS, Biafran government in exile are in order, and this is what will trigger the recognition of Biafra. We just need just one state, from the EU bloc, or a member of, or just a sovereign nation. The standard is that a sovereign nation, and that's why I use Israel as an example. Once it's been done by a sovereign nation, it enters it's in line with agreement of the EU requirements and of course the United Nations. So the possibility of Biafra coming is 101%. Then we'll also use this opportunity to celebrate Biafrans all over the world, celebrate Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, irrespective of the conflicts that are going on within the structure. And I can tell, let me just give you a final note on that. I will not repeat such thing again, but my loyalty is to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu until further notice. Then on the other angle too, we know that he's going to be set free in that regard. Ojukwu actually started Radio Biafra. It went moribund later as Ricky came, because of financial obligations of that, the whole thing died. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu came into the picture, worked for some years, put in his money, revived Radio Biafra, and did all the modalities of legitimacy surrounding Radio Biafra outside the country and within, and it was guaranteed, and that was how Radio Biafra actually began, and that's exactly what also Mazi Nnamdi Kanu did for an organization like the IPOB. So we must give it to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu.
Many people are closely watching the latest developments surrounding Nnamdi Kanu, and today there are two major stories that have generated serious discussion across Nigeria and among supporters around the world. The first is the reported release of Professor Martin Agaji, who has been widely identified as one of Nnamdi Kanu's personal doctors. The second is the growing conversation surrounding reports that an Israeli diplomatic official who recently visited Nnamdi Kanu may brief senior officials in Israel about what was observed during that visit. While some of these reports continue to circulate widely online, not every detail has been officially confirmed, so it is important to separate verified information from ongoing claims as events continue to unfold. The reported release of Professor Agaji has been welcomed by many people who had expressed concern after news emerged that he had allegedly been taken into custody by security operatives. According to reports shared by several commentators and supporters, his release came after strong public attention from medical professionals, legal observers, media platforms, and concerned citizens who questioned the circumstances surrounding his detention. Although different accounts describe the sequence of events differently, many people see his reported release as an important development that has eased immediate concerns about his welfare. Before we continue, if you enjoy balanced updates like this, where we focus on facts, ongoing developments, and explain the bigger picture in simple English, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest reports. Your support helps us continue bringing carefully presented news and discussions to you every day. Now, one question many people have been asking is simple. Why has the reported release of Professor Agaji attracted so much attention? The answer lies in his connection to the long-running legal case involving Nnamdi Kanu. Over the years, health has become one of the most discussed aspects of the case. Lawyers representing Kanu have repeatedly raised concerns regarding his medical condition, while government representatives have presented their own position before the court. Because Professor Agaji has been associated with Kanu's medical care, any report involving him naturally attracts public interest. Many legal analysts have pointed out that whenever a doctor becomes part of a high-profile legal matter, public attention usually increases because medical evidence can sometimes become an important issue in court proceedings. That is one reason why reports surrounding Professor Agaji quickly spread across traditional media, online platforms, and social media discussions. Another important point that many Nigerians are discussing is the role public attention may have played. Several commentators believe that widespread media coverage encouraged authorities to act quickly and provide clarity regarding the situation. Whether or not that was the determining factor cannot be stated with certainty, but what is clear is that the story received significant public attention within a short period. At the same time, another part of this developing story has generated even more debate. Reports have circulated claiming that an Israeli diplomatic official who recently visited Nnamdi Kanu is expected to brief authorities in Israel after returning from the visit. According to those reports, the visit itself was viewed by many observers as significant because approval for such visits can often involve diplomatic procedures. However, as of now, the specific claims regarding discussions with senior Israeli leaders have not been independently confirmed through official public statements, and viewers should treat those reports with appropriate caution while following further developments. That has not stopped conversations across Nigeria. Supporters of Nnamdi Kanu see every international development as an indication that the case continues to receive attention beyond Nigeria's borders. Others believe that international observation of legal processes is common in cases that attract global interest. Regardless of personal opinions, one thing is certain: whenever international diplomacy becomes part of a discussion surrounding a high-profile legal case, public interest naturally grows. If we step back for a moment, this entire situation also highlights something bigger. It reminds us how closely Nigerians now follow legal, political, and human rights stories through digital media. Years ago, many updates would only appear through traditional newspapers or television broadcasts. Today, information spreads within minutes across multiple platforms. While this allows people to stay informed more quickly, it also must carefully distinguish between confirmed facts, informed analysis, and unverified claims. This is why it is always wise to remain patient whenever a developing story emerges. Early reports sometimes change as more information becomes available. Responsible reporting involves what has been confirmed, while also making it clear when certain details remain uncertain. For many supporters of Nnamdi Kanu, the latest reports have renewed hope that progress may eventually be made regarding his legal situation. Others continue to emphasize that the matter remains before the courts and should follow the legal process. Whatever position people hold, there is broad agreement that clarity, fairness, and respect for due process are important principles in any legal system. Another interesting aspect of this story is how quickly public reactions emerged after the reports became widely known. Across social media platforms, thousands of comments appeared within hours. Some people celebrated the reported release of Professor Agaji, describing it as positive news. Others called for greater transparency regarding the circumstances surrounding his detention. Many simply expressed relief after hearing that he was reportedly free again. This demonstrates how emotionally connected many Nigerians have become to long-running national stories. After following developments for several years, every new update attracts immediate attention because people want to understand what it could mean for the next stage of the case.
Oh yes, that is a great move. The issue of UN, we are still waiting and we are still expecting them to do more and for them to do the needful, because the issue of every countries around the world, whenever countries rise up and start determining for self-determination, they will not even speak and they will not act until when they see that those countries have started fighting civil war between themselves, and which we don't even know what is the main cause of it, because they will not react when something is wrong is happening in a country, just like what is going on in Nigeria today. Different ethnic group, different body, and the different group is rising up every day demanding for justice, but they will not see the justice because of they have not started causing violence everywhere. Why the main people that is causing this violence, the terrorists, the Fulani terrorists that is causing all those things, they used to leave them, they used to look them as if they are doing nothing, but they are the main problem that Nigeria is facing. Then the issue of Biafra, the best solution to this issue is for them to conduct a referendum for them, so that they will have their own country and they conduct and they do their own government the way they want it, not forcing people to be in a country they don't want to be. That is not the right thing. And the issue of Professor Agaji, the DSS going to his place, arresting him and detaining him, which we don't even understand the main cause of it until date. Nobody has even understand why they do those things. I don't know. Every time the government of Nigeria will be fighting every means, everything hard for them to silence anybody that is coming to speak for the truth and to stand for justice. They used to do everything to frustrate the person and to weaken the person's strength, so that at the end the person will not know what X is doing. How can somebody who is treating somebody, who is treating a person that you know that he did not commit anything, then his life would now be at risk? Somehow it shows that the government, the Nigerian government and the country, they know what is going on, and they don't even want Mazam Kanu to be alive. That is what is it. Because how can you go and arrest the doctor, and at the end, you at the beginning, it is not public opinion, and it is not the way people start asking and agitating and they talking, fighting, saying a lot of things against the thing that they did. They would have even silenced him and they make sure that they don't know what is and what is going on. But thank God and glory be to God that they have risen. They have risen. We are very, very happy for that. Well, I would like your comments down below. What do you think about the whole thing happening in Nigeria? Like, subscribe, and share for everyone to see things going on. So thank you for watching.